I'm New York City Police. I mean, I thought it was the most ridiculous, no, not the most ridiculous thing. Shorts, the shorts on a police officer, ridiculous.
We wanted to know how professionals have changed over time, so we got 3 different experts from multiple decades to share their experiences.
I worked for the New York City Police Department from 1969 to 1996.
I served in the New York City Police Department for 20 years, from 1986 to 2006.
I served as a member of the New York City Police Department from 2003 to 2023.
Oh yeah, and this is the Plymouth Fury, 8 cylinders. They were good cars. And then they changed over to the blue cars.
But the Grand Fury, I liked it. It wasn't the fastest car in the world, had a V8. What I loved about it was, if you look at the front and the back, they're almost identical. It made it easy, it was narrow, great visibility. The K car in the back, they only had 1 or 2 of them when I was around. They were all busted up. Then we went to the Impalas. I didn't particularly care for the Impalas at all. I wasn't a fan.
So this is a Ford Crown Victoria, or Crown Vic as we like to call it. This was one of the first cars that I rode in. It felt more like driving a boat, the Ford Interceptor SUV. When they first started implementing these cars, only the bosses rode around in these cars. And then some years later, they integrated them into patrol. So this was a real luxury to ride in. Super fast, handled great. It was just more modern coming from the Crown Vic to this.
The bubblegum and a bubblegum top, just the one light on the top. Now with these cars, you had the rack up here, and you had inside, and it was a better setup and better communications. And then years later, of course, they put computers in. They had found that the siren here in the old cars, they weren't heard as well. This was a straight sound. You turned it on, that was the alarm. Here, you could have 3 different types of alarms.
The original sirens when I first started, the Grand Furies, and even after that, you hit the horn button once and you get, we used to call it the whoop. Whoop them out of the way, whoop them out of the way, and you get that whoop. We had a couple different tones, right? You had that high-low European style, wee-wah, whatever. I liked a little bit of a mix. One sound constantly kind of just gets lost in the sauce. So if you mix it up, change it up, maybe somebody ahead of you will say, oh geez, something's going on, let me get the hell out of the way. Now it's just you hit the sound, you get it.
They call it the grumbler. It would make like a rumbling sound. The car would actually shake a little bit. Oh my God, it would just be like, everything would shake. That's it. That first, that's the shaking.
Well, when you had the sirens on, did people get out of the way for you?
Never.
But they always move for the fire department though.
A lot of them didn't have air conditioning. You used to have to fight to get an air-conditioned car. You'd sweat in these cars.
If you're asking if guys left the cars dirty, absolutely. So in the morning, sometimes you'd be picking up a real mess. You know, no gas in the car, coffee cups.
You would always smell like whatever someone ate. Everyone thinks their food smells good until the next person has to smell it.
And there was always an excuse.
Guys ever get punished for leaving it dirty?
Yeah, this is one of the stories that some people used to do. If one particular guy would leave the car awful all the time, they'd go down, if they had a stable, they'd go down and put horse manure on top of the air filter just before the end of the tour. And when the guy came in and relieved them and started up the car, and they'd go a few miles, and all of a sudden, this strange odor would come. That would cure the guy if he was dirtying the car, because he knew why that was done.
This actually looks a lot nicer than the car I rode in. It has all its hubcaps, which is very rare. Our cars typically did not look like this, and it figures because it is a highway patrol car.
The other stuff that guys did to them, which I never really understood, ripping the vents out, they'd poke holes in the dashboard so that they could stick their pen in there to make it like a pen holder, and the guys are pretty abusive.
People like to pick at the steering wheel, so there was always like little pieces of it missing for some reason.
This is the regular 38 caliber service revolver. It's a 6-shooter.
It's what I started out with in the police department from 1986 till probably early 90s, 94. So this is a Glock 19 pistol. It was one of the service pistols that was available to us when the job transitioned to 9mm.
I carried a Glock 19. 9mm, it holds 15 rounds. Using a revolver, it's slow on the reload.
It was very difficult to load and reload. You'd have to put the bullets in one at a time. Then they came with these speed loaders, which were made of like rubber. You had it on your belt, and you take the speed loader out and you could put it there, but it never went in exactly right. The left militants, they were using bombs and they were using 9mm.
Criminals are carrying these guns, and we were kind of being outgunned in terms of capacity. Other than capacity, I never really felt outgunned with it.
So a trigger pull makes the gun harder to fire. This gun actually has a trigger pull of anywhere between 11 and 12 pounds. It's a very hard pull. I think the newer models that they have in 2021, they have a 5-pound trigger pull.
It has a trigger pull. It's double action, single action gun. So the double action pull is a little on the long and stiff side.
Did you ever have to pull your gun?
Oh yeah. One time there was a man with a gun, and we go down in the basement. He's got a rifle pointed at me. You know, I had my gun out, so I disarmed him. Many times I could have used my weapon and it would have been what they call a good shooting, but I didn't. They didn't shoot. I didn't shoot. That's good.
Here's what I'm going to say. You pulled it almost every day, you know, for the most part. You really did. So, yeah, like I said, I was in a shooting. You know, not that I'm not proud of it, but not something I'd like to go over.
Do you ever have to pull your firearm?
No, I never put my firearm out on anyone.
Well, when I first came on, we were still using heavy wool. They called it serge. It soaked up the water. This is the choker. It goes around the neck. The collar is buckled together so tight that they call it a choker. The 70s were one of the first to wear the powder blue. They wanted to show a softer way, so they went to the light blue.
Yeah, I mean, we started with the light blue shirts. They were kind of sloppy. And then, you know, we transitioned to the dark blue shirts, which I wasn't crazy about at first, but I thought it looks a lot better, it looks a lot more professional.
This is standard wear. Most of these guys are wearing cargos, which were also authorized. Here, it looks like this guy right here is wearing a turtleneck with the shirt. This wasn't always standard. That was something that they implemented later.
You know what they say? Why they went back to the dark blue was that too many donut stains, coffee stains, and pizza stains showed on the light blue.
Yeah, I'm going to totally agree. You would see mustard stains. The ties would have stains on it.
Would you get stains on your shirt?
I was meticulous about keeping my uniform clean and spotless, and some guys weren't. I remember doing a roll call one time when I was a sergeant in Brooklyn, and this inspector came in to do the roll call and inspect the troop, and he stopped in front of this one guy, and he looked at me and he said, "Sarge, write him up." He said, "Slovenly appearance." I'm like, okay, that's what I'll do, slovenly appearance.
In Manhattan, you had to be extremely buttoned up. Him especially, he would probably get reprimanded for his wear. They inspected us in Manhattan like they did in the police academy. Your shoes had to be shined. Your uniform had to be like spotless, immaculate. You know, because you were in Manhattan, you were like a representative of the department. You really had to be on point.
Did you ever get reprimanded?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did as a rookie.
I'm seeing if I know these guys. The thing that I hated the most, and that was the baseball cap.
The baseball hat at first I thought would be great. I thought, all right, this is great. This is better than this 8-point thing here. And then they made you put that 2-pound hunk of metal cap device on it. So this is what we call the cap device. It has the NYPD or state insignia, whatever the case may be, the 2 Indians. And then underneath it would be your shield number, which had a threaded piece in the back that you screwed in, and that thread was about that long, and it was constantly hitting you in the head. It didn't last long.
You know, I'm not on the New York Yankees, New York Mets. I'm New York City Police. I mean, I thought it was the most ridiculous. No, not the most ridiculous thing. Shorts. That was the most ridiculous thing. The shorts on a police officer. Ridiculous. You see a number of mustaches. That's a police mustache. You see the picture here. Look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everybody had a mustache. Guy walks into a bar. Gotta be a cop. Had a mustache.
Well, that's the 70s porn star stash. If you were a cop at that time, you had a mustache.
Were you allowed to have beards?
No beards. The only way you could have beards was you had to have, we used to call it the bumps, right? Which there's probably some technical name like a folliculitis or something, whatever. But if you had the bumps, you couldn't shave, but it had to be neatly trimmed. You know, look more like a 5 o'clock shadow, but no, not me. It wasn't my thing.
Around 2016, they relaxed their policy on beards. I believe they probably initially did it because the job was becoming more diverse and a lot of people had beards for religious reasons. Of course, all the guys were happy about that, especially the younger ones, because they wanted beards because they felt it made them look older and people wouldn't know that they were new on the job, which, you know, was pretty funny.
Yeah, in around $13,000 was my starting salary in 1971. It was enough.
So 1986, my starting salary, roughly with night shift differential and a little bit of overtime, was about $35,000, $36,000. At that time, it wasn't bad. The sad part is that starting salary hasn't changed much in 30 years.
34,000, something like that. I was, 24 years old, so yeah, it was enough because I hadn't moved out on my own yet.
A lot of the people wanted to join the NYPD. their family, former NYPD, they had an advocation for it. I just happened to score very high in the exam.
I actually turned it down once or twice, and then in 1986, I was out of college a couple of years already. I had jobs, but no career. Took the test again, and I said, you know, this time I'm going. And I loved it. It was a great time. It was a ticket to the greatest show on earth, as they say.
I joined the NYPD because I lost a family friend in 9/11. His name was Sergeant Rodney Gillis, and he was very close to my family. And I felt like I wanted to join the NYPD and pick up where he left off.
I was made a police officer in January 1971. I was sent to the 7-5 precinct in East New York, which is a high crime area, where you learn to be a police officer. From there, I went to narcotics, and this is the time during the crack era. And I went to a unit called the crack unit, where we made a lot of arrests on crack. And we were responsible to clean up the crack, get the people off the street. So I made many arrests in narcotics. And then when I finished there, I went into a detective squad. I worked every crime imaginable. And then I retired.
My first command was the 72nd Precinct in Brooklyn, Sunset Park. ESU was what I had always wanted. And at that time, you know, it was a phone call. It was a hook. Did a couple years there, made sergeant, went to the press office, spent 4 or 5 years there. Learned the hard way how things work in the palace, the political aspect of the job, right? And then 9/11 happened. ESU took a big hit, right? 14 of the 23 guys were from ESU. Made some phone calls, and by that afternoon I was transferred back, and then finished up there till 2006.
I started out in Midtown South, and my post was from West 28th Street to West 45th Street, all along 7th Avenue. And that was all on foot, which was a fun time because you got to learn who everyone was. You knew everyone, so you got to learn the neighborhood, learned who lives there, who doesn't. And then when I went to the Bronx as a supervisor, I just pretty much covered everything. So I really love my time in the Bronx.
In the 1970s, they didn't call it domestic terrorism. They're very careful with their words. They call it political disturbances. Not one day didn't go by, practically, that there wasn't a bombing or there wasn't a shooting all across the nation. And the people who got hit the worst, New York City was one of them. We had about, just in 1969, probably 50 incidents. One time they had bombed 8 buildings all in one day. And there was a lot of sympathizers with the militant groups. When you went out on patrol, you had to be very careful. The most earth-shattering day was when Rocco Lloyd and Gregory Foster were assassinated by the Black Liberation Army. They were walking by a stoop. And as they got past the stoop, 3 people came off the stoop, shot him. No warning, nothing. As Gregory lay on the ground, they shot bullets in each of his eyes. Rocco, they shot him in the groin. So this wasn't just an assassination. This was to humiliate. And then they had done nothing. Others were killed after that also. It was significant, these 2 guys, because they were young. You know, 23, 24 years old. They were both in Vietnam. And, you know, a little easier to kill you in Vietnam than it was on the streets of New York. At least it was that way. It should have been that way, and it wasn't. They served their country, and to die like that, that hits, yeah, that hurts.
So at the time I was assigned Brooklyn South Narcotics, I was literally home sleeping. My middle brother was a construction worker in Manhattan, rang my phone and said, hey, you better get up, you gotta go in, a plane just hit the Trade Center. And I was thinking Cessna, you know, some pilot had a heart attack and hit the building. 40 minutes later he calls me, he's like, you going into work, what are you doing? Another plane just hit the other towers. And I'm like, it's too early for you to be drinking, what the hell is that? I got up, turned the TV on, stood there totally amazed. So I'm like, this is bad. Grabbed an AR-15, which was legal at the time, a couple of magazines, headed into work. I walk into the Brooklyn South Narcotics office, got an AR-15, a bag full of mags, and it was chaos. Guys just running out. There's only a limited amount of vehicles. So I grabbed guys, whoa, hold up. That's, you know, if the vehicle holds 4 people, make sure you're going down with 4 people. Let's not go down with 1 or 2. I know we all want to get there. I wound up getting the ferry ride into Manhattan because they had shut the bridges, nobody could drive in. So we had to drive down to Brooklyn Army Terminal, get on one of these fast ferries, and they basically drove us over to Chelsea Piers and threw us off, climbed over the side of the boat and onto the pier. We were like a reserve, let's say. You know, there was a couple big chiefs there. All right, lieutenants, captains, let's go. Grab your people. How many guys you got? Started putting rosters together in teams. And little by little, they would send the guys out. the dust, right? I remember seeing two of my guys show up all of a sudden, and from the knee down, their pants are white. I'm like, you guys went down there, didn't you? You told me you were going for coffee, and you were supposed. Yeah, no. So everybody from basically the knee down, if you were down in this area, it was just one of those telltale signs. Your legs were white, you know, just from all this dust, all this powder. You know, this is all pulverized concrete, pulverized sheetrock, and just, you know, it was almost like a badge of honor, right? You'd see other cops, the Nassau cops, Jersey cops, and they all had that white stain from the knee down or the mid-calf down, and, you know, they were there.
It sounds like all you guys from all over the city came into Manhattan. What was going on to crimes in the rest of the boroughs?
It really kind of shut down. I think even the criminals were in awe of what the heck happened. Obviously, precincts maintained a certain amount of coverage, but you know, my recollection from later was that I think even some of the news stories were basically like for 3 or 4 days, there was like nothing going on. You know, even the bad guys were shot. So this is what we used to call the pile, right, or the hole, ground zero. This was the pile. A lot of it would have been what we call bucket brigades, just hundreds and hundreds of cops, all with 5-gallon spackle buckets or paint buckets, and passing buckets up, a couple guys shoveling in and then passing, you know, literally digging the place out by hand. You know, and this was the day. This was, you know, the purple mask was what they handed us, you know, the N95s. You'd have some tools, and it was just digging. There was, you know, every now and then you'd catch a little void maybe, and guys would do a search, but a couple of the Port Authority guys that were injured and trapped that you got out and you held out hope for something like that, but, you know, those were few and far between, unfortunately. You know? NYPD, we're fortunate, relative term. We lost 23 guys, less than everybody else. You know, 14 guys were from my unit, you know, 14 friends of mine. You know, it was history.
I would say the biggest thing for my time there was the George Floyd incident. I feel like that one incident changed the way not only we police, but policing across the country. These were people protesting the murder of George Floyd. These people just wanted to be heard. We were listening to them at first, but it got very bad very quickly. I saw it from both sides. My time in the police department, people, you know, are arrested all the time. That shouldn't result in someone dying. What I saw as a black woman was hurtful. And I don't think any good cop condoned what they saw. I took this job to help people, as the majority of the people that I worked with. It's almost like what you were working for was kind of like destroyed in an instant by a cop that wasn't even, you know, a part of NYPD. It was tough because people were working for long hours. We were out there all night. When you work a protest, you don't get to say, okay, it's 8 hours, time to go home. You're there until they disperse. So now you have days of that one end. People are tired. People are on edge. Yeah, this says we see police get away with murder. As a police officer, when I see statements like this, I feel like they're very blanket. It's kind of like, why are we getting this flack? This did not happen here. There was an incident when I was in the 4-3. A woman was shot and killed, unfortunately, by a fellow sergeant. You know, it was terrible. I knew the guy personally. He's a good guy, very fair guy. And to see people come in that did not live there, try to call him a murderer, try to target his family. Our community were the ones that rallied around us. The people came to the precinct to protest, and our community was right there with them and saying, no, like, you guys don't live here, go home. You know, we live here, we work here, we know our cops. We don't want you here, and they told them that. And those people left. You know, you would see something like this on the news and feel that everywhere, everyone hates police. And I don't necessarily believe that. I don't think it's accurate all the time, and it's tough. It's tough to see.
People who complain will complain about the police because they got a violation, whether it be a traffic ticket, whether it be a parking ticket. But at that particular time, boy, they don't like the police. And something happened, you got robbed, or your house is burglarized. Where's the police? If something happens, they want you to be everywhere.
I think in general, they liked us. You know, there's always that faction that's, well, you know, you're an occupying army and you come in here and you run back to Long Island or wherever, which wasn't me, but there was always that group like that.
In my opinion, I don't think everyone hates cops. I think the majority of people want to see cops. Criminals hate cops. It's only how you interact with people and how you talk to people. They're bad eggs in any profession. If I had a bad experience with a doctor, I wouldn't say, oh, all doctors are horrible. Do police departments have work to do? Absolutely.
Knowing what I know, I probably would not be a police officer. Not that I loved it. I loved it being a police officer, but you first get there, you're doing midnights, doing 4 to 12s, you're doing 8 to 4s. You're not home for holidays, you're not home for weekends. It's not a great life.
Today, I mean, you watch the videos, guys are mounting off on car stops, just zero respect, so terrible. Absolutely could not recommend anybody in good faith taking this job here.
People don't respect police like they used to. When I came on, you know, you respected the uniform. You know, you saw a cop on a post, they told you things one time, that was it. People now, they like to fight. It's the age of social media. People like to film the police and get in the way. Police are afraid to like make mistakes. Makes you hesitate more, which is just not good for anyone. When I came on, you couldn't even use your phone. Now we have our memo books on our phones. You know, we're always using the phone. We use phones to run people's background.
I always see police officers at the train station near me. They always go, they're always on their phone.
That's why they're always on their phone. We're in a different age.
I thought I had the best job in the world as a New York City detective, solving crimes. You start out with nothing and you make a plan and you arrest them and bring them in to the family. Now they know who killed their son, daughter, or whatever.
Family ever say thank you to you?
So of all the homicides that I solved, I never got a real thank you. And that's part of the job. Don't let it bother you.
I mean, yeah, I love the job. I delivered a baby one time, a couple of water rescues. You know, it was the greatest show on earth. It really was. And the politics aside, let's say, if you're a trooper or some other department, you may be riding the road for 20 years. There is so much here to do, so many different aspects of this job. There's specialized units, there's detectives, there's robbery units, there's emergency service unit, there's an aviation unit, there's harbor units. There's all these scuba units, there's all these things to do, as opposed to some other jobs where your best day is going to be the same day at 1 year as it is at 19 years.
I do love the job. Yeah. It made me who I am today.